we have to start thinking about how we recreate those protections in a world where peers are providing services to other peers. It seems very likely that social media plays a big role in spreading the word about new sharing services and amplifying their perceived value. The really important role that social media plays in facilitating the sharing economy is in creating the trust infrastructure for it. To me, what's fascinating about Facebook isn't that it provides a new way to interact with new people, but that it digitizes existing real-world social ties. And so suddenly we have all of this real-world social capital that has been rendered in digital form and brought online. And so it plays a role in amplifying perceived value, it plays a role in spreading the word, but it also forms the trust infrastructure that is essential when we move away from buying from branded companies and towards buying from that semi-anonymous peer that we actually don't know. It breaks the tie between ownership and access. A lot of things we have owned in the past are because there was really no alternative. I think Paul Graham put it well at some point a couple of years ago. He said maybe ownership was just a hack before we came up with the right access model, and that sort of shared access is the right model of consumption. Because you can earn money through your ownership, it may change the nature of ownership as well. So I have evidence, for example, that when peer-to-peer car rental marketplaces enter a particular sector, then people in a particular income bracket may actually buy better cars than they used to because they can spend more on the monthly payments and make some of it off by sort of renting it out in their spare cycles. People's identities are probably going to be less closely tied to what they own and more closely tied to other things. As we have technological progress, we seem to isolate people more. We seem to disconnect people more from the communities, from the institutions. And part of the reason for this is tied very closely to what causes economic progress. So we create these institutions like banks, like courts of law, and they make exchange more efficient. Now, what the sharing economy platforms seem to be doing is reintroducing some of the personal aspect, some of the interactive aspect, some of the connected to other people aspect to some forms of consumption. That seems to fly in the face of a trend that we've been observing for the last 2 centuries. By reintroducing human contact into everyday economic activities, we may start to see a lowering of the level of isolation, disconnectedness, and loneliness that modern technological progress typically induces. One hope that I have is that as we move away from ownership as the consumption model and towards shared access, we may in fact be able to create greater equality in our standard of living. That's all very good in theory, but the practicalities are that we don't yet have good mechanisms to facilitate sharing across socioeconomic boundaries. So we do have evidence from an academic study that suggests that perhaps people of different ethnicities are pricing their Airbnb services differently. I don't think that there's compelling evidence to suggest that there is discrimination going on Airbnb or other peer-to-peer markets. But I think what's important is that the study raises the possibility that this could happen. And what's really important to me is that we have created a whole host of protections and a whole host of regulations that prevent this kind of behavior explicitly in the old industrial company to consumer model of economic activity. And we have to start thinking about how we recreate those protections in a world where peers are providing services to other peers.